adventurer, welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do
just about everything.
So this is part 2 of a 2-part episode, I guess, or 2-part series.
I suppose so. Yeah, no, the LARP was split into 2 days,
Yeah.
So might as well split the episode.
In
Because a lot happened.
Yeah, in which we talk about LARP.
I think after the first day, we went back to the tent. We're like, a lot just happened.
It was like 3 a.m. Yeah. This is episode 2 of that 2-part thing where we talk about our experience with Reckoning LARP specifically. If you have not seen the first one, I definitely recommend because you won't have any idea what's happening.
I mean, you could just listen to a fun story and just try to, I actually recommend you watch the second part first and then make your own story of what happened.
I disagree. Watch the first. You know what?
And then watch the first one and see where you're wrong.
We know those sweet ratings, so watch them both twice, maybe 3 times.
Watch them both twice, compare and contrast.
Anyways.
Play half one video over half the other.
So we just got done with an epic night in which we had to recover a severed hand. We had to fight a troll.
Oh, this didn't fight in my case.
It didn't fight. It should get lost in the woods in your case. I had to chase down somebody who slit somebody else's throat. I know, words is hard.
You can't just restart when I'm around.
We're gonna thrit somebody's throat. I'm gonna thrit your throat. Tell you that much. Yeah. So there was like epic emotional moments with Evelyn, your character. We've hit a lot.
I think so far we've been playing well to our classes. So where like you've been doing a lot more combat, I've been doing a lot more getting lost in the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
And talking to people.
So day the second. It started off a little bit tricky, I felt. I felt the flow of it kind of stuttered a little bit at the very beginning.
Yeah, so actually, like, you weren't much in the camp area.
Right.
I don't even know where you were, but it ended up being that there was a bunch of quests that were relatively similar enough that people were getting confused.
Yep. They
were overlapping. And then we kept on holding these big faction meetings to try and clear stuff up and get people on a path to go on. But we were also holding like little meetings off the side to the point that I was just jumping meeting to meeting and going, what is going on? And then you would just wander in later and be like, what's going on? I'm like, I have no idea.
So and that isn't like necessarily a critique to the game. We had a blast. It was a good time. But there were, I think... the like, amount of quests that were happening
at once. A thing that comes up later, but like confusion is part of the story. Right. And we'll explain that later, but it all plays together of like there was, we talked about how there was an unknown force potentially coming to attack us.
Right.
And later on we find out that not only were they coming to attack us, but they were purposely sowing confusion. So we genuinely don't know if those quests were purposely confusing.
Yeah, and not just confusing,
but factions like fight, because they were also quests that made factions like fight against each other. Which seemed to be the purpose of the third party.
Right. And that seemed to be the purpose of most of the second day. Was getting us to be at each other's throats the entire time.
And it worked.
It worked for sure.
So eventually we got to the point where everyone was so like frustrated and gunning for action that a bunch of Rivlins formed under one of our faction leaders, the Bailiff, and they were like, there's a merchant we need to stop.
Right.
And that's all they needed. Like, they went...
That was the spark that lit this crazy
It literally, like, we never
flame.
even talked about the merchant again. All they needed was a reason to organize. And then once they were in the main camp area, they were like, screw the merchant, let's go kill some Hadrians.
Yeah, so let me rewind this a little bit, right? So before then, there was some other little side quests where, like, our... Earl, basically, like our little king person.
He lost his crown.
His crown got stolen, and there was a lot of back and forth. And the Vatican, the Viking analog there, gave it back to us, but it turned out to be a fake.
From what I understand, the Hadrians stole it. Mm-hmm. The Suzak-Mar stole it from them, and were gonna sell it to us. And then the Hadrians, in an attempt to save face, offered to fight the Suzak-Mar to get it back from them for us. Meanwhile, the Vatican stole it from the Suzak-Mar secretly.
Tangled.
and then gave it to us for free. Like, no, actually, no, I think they paid for it.
It was a fake one, though.
No, I think it was the real one. It was so tangled at that point that everyone was convinced that all of them were fake and everyone had it.
Well, anyways, so rewinding back from that was part of that causing tension between the factions.
That's what I learned from so many meetings. And also just listening into stuff and like...
Well, so my character being my character, I go and I spy. So I spied a meeting. I saw all these Vaticans sitting and Hadrian coming up to them. So I'm like, I am going to be a fly on the wall of this one. So I sneak around with Ash. Ash came with, and we're just sitting and listening, and it was straight up what sound like very much betrayal against the Rivlin people. So it was the Vatican being like, hey, you know, we're kind of a purpose. I think we can get along together. And the Hadrian being like, cool, when things pop off, we're on the same side, right?
And that was an established kind of thing between them. Because later on, when things do pop off, the Hadrians definitely expected the Vatican to be on their side.
For sure, yeah. So I'm witnessing this, and I see them change hands. Money changes hands. The Hadrian pay the Vatican, and the Vatican are very much like, if you pay me, I'll do whatever, right? Like, they're like mercenary kind of people. So I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So I go back to our camp to relay this.
Yeah, but once you're in the camp with all the meetings, the bailiff, one of our faction leaders, has very much decided the Vaticans are the ones to be trusted.
Yeah, so he's saying that the Vaticans are to be trusted, and not only that, but that's about the time when the everybody started gathering to go find this merchant,
so
right?
In the midst of that knowledge, there's this big open area, and all the factions come from either side. So the Rivlins are the first to get there and organize. And then eventually people kind of bring their soldiers just because other people are. So they're like, oh, are we organizing? Is fight gonna happen? So we should be there too, just to protect ourselves. The Rivlins put themselves in the middle, which is the worst place to be, because they're the first to organize. So everyone organizes around them. So then the Suzak Mar come in from this side, and the Vatican come in from the other side, and they're on either side of us, and the Hadrians are coming in from. So they're in a position. Even if just the Hadrians and the Vatican side with us, then the Vatican could loop around the back of us.
Yeah.
Suzak Mar is a small faction.
Yeah.
They could slaughter us.
Right. So it looked really bad, and especially having just seen that deal take place, I'm like, we are screwed. Like, we don't want to be right here.
Remember you kept coming up to me and being like, this is bad, we're gonna get surrounded. And I'm like, I have other concerns.
Right. We'll
because
talk about your concerns in a minute. Her and Kit, by the way, LARPshire.
Kit, not you, Kit.
Not me,
Her character's name is Kit.
Her character's name is Kit.
We'll call her Character Kit.
Yeah, another great channel, LARPshire. Check them out. They were there as well, and
she was my partner in crime.
She was your partner in crime.
Why are all my partners in crime named Kit?
I don't know. I think technically you're my partner in crime, for being honest. So we are in the middle. We are definitely surrounded by all these. Now I'm like, we are screwed. So they're posturing to be our allies, though. And I'm like, I don't trust this. So I start being me and talking to their bone knitter, saying like, hey, when things pop off, you're in smaller factions. Let us protect you. And I gather their bone knitters down to the back.
So basically you take all their healers.
I took all their healers, kidnapping them, being like, cool, if they pop off, I have their healers, and we've taken them. So I had my people, like, the people who I've been talking to being like, this isn't a good position, right? Everyone's like, yup. I'm like, cool. Warden these people off, and they will be our prisoners if we get betrayed.
Yeah, so in the meantime... I, like, from the get-go...
Right.
Like, the bailiff is the one that kind of popped off the, like, we're gonna gather. And I'm arguing with him the entire walk up the camp.
Like, this isn't a good idea.
Like, why do we need to organize so many people to be able to stop one merchant? And then he switches over to, like, if you see red, fight. And I'm like, how, like, in the past, he had been the one that I had gone to stop people that were potentially going to fight Hadrians. and potentially dragging the rest of the Rivlins into that conflict, because if one Rivlin goes and the Hadrians might view that as an attack.
And just as an aside, like, the war just ended. We don't want to start another war.
Like
that's why she doesn't want to fight.
We're still in a famine.
Right.
Like, the entire reason the war ended is still going on. We have no, like, basis to start another war. We've only had a year of peace. We've barely put ourselves back together. We're barely surviving. And we had just had another meeting, like, 30 minutes before, where we were like, we all promise that we will not be the instigator, because something is obviously pulling the strings from the background trying to make us fight each other. Right. So I was like, why are we doing this? What are you doing? How does this make you different from all the other people you've just stopped to instigate this fight? And he like, by then everyone was so like
whipped up
that they steamrolled past me, and I was like, no. The artisans with the non-combatants are so tired of people with swords charging forward and leaving us to clean up the mess. So I went around and eventually picked up Kit, and she was like, yeah! And she became my partner in crime. The Hadrians hadn't come out yet, so everyone was lining up, and the Hadrians are one of the smallest factions. They had probably like 10 to 15 people versus every other faction. Rivlins were the biggest. Yeah. So even just against the Rivlins, we're probably a force against every other faction. Right. And then it was the Rivlins plus the Vatican plus the Suzak-Mar were ready to fight the hate. It was ready to be a slaughter. So we all made the decision. We're like, no, the artisans refuse to support this. We've just been through 10 years of war. We refuse to support fighting for no reason that we will have to clean up after. Right. In the beginning, we were going to refuse to heal anyone. But then eventually, like, we're like, that will just cause more death. So in the end, we decided to heal neutral.
Everybody.
We're going to heal everybody. Right. From now on, and we pulled in the artisans that you kidnapped, because they didn't know they were being kidnapped. So they thought they were just part of the in-group. Right. We were like, will you join us in this neutrality? And they were like, yeah. So all of the artisans eventually joined together to be like, we will heal
really cool.
Everyone. Yeah. And we went to the bailiff, who was like still getting ready to, like, we were still waiting for the Hadrians to come out. And we're like, this is what you need to know. We, as the artisans, have united, and we officially do not support what you are about to do. If you start fighting, we will heal both sides equally. And he got mad at that. And then when the Hadrians come out, and they were just this, like, tiny 10-people force, we're like, this is not right, and they need to know that we will heal them. Right. So I pulled out my little purple handkerchief, and I looked at Kit, and I was like, are we doing, like, I want to go to the Hadrians. Meanwhile, like, we had lined up into two fronts. So I was basically in a walk between two fronts about to attack each other. I was like, really I want to go to the Hadrians, and I want them to know that we do not support this, and that we will be healing them. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I don't know if we can. But we should. And we just kind of like had that moment where we're both terrified. We're like, let's go do this. And we walked. And we walked out of the Rivlin line all the way to the Hadrians, who, by the way, are like full metal armor. They got shield, they got like a phalanx going on. And we're walking with my purple handkerchief high, showing that we're neutral non-combatants.
And from our point of view, like, down in the back, like, we have our bows ready and stuff.
Gareth is protective of Evelyn, so he's like, he watches her walk between two battles about to clash.
Everyone starts whispering, like, what are they doing? Like, where do they think they're going? And meanwhile, there were some other things. So there was somebody else who's very crucial to that I want to shout out to, is Voltaire.
Yeah, so Voltaire went with us. Yeah. Eventually.
This dude was just in the background, like, doing a lot of stuff, but very quietly about it.
Yeah, he was like a facilitator for a lot of people's games, just trying to help everyone as best as he could.
Yeah, to the point, though, where, like, other people in our faction stopped trusting him because they thought he was doing bad stuff.
He was working with other factions.
Yeah, so, like, during that battle, somebody that I was with, who will remain nameless for now, was like, I'm going to shoot him.
They thought he was, like, a Hadrian spy, and they were going to assassinate him.
Yeah, they were going to kill him during the battle. Like, if I shoot him in the back, just so you know.
And the only reason he survived was because, out of the kindness of his heart, he went with us as we marched between lines. Even when the battle began, he stayed with us, protected us, and paid from his own, like, coin
the healing
to heal anyone who didn't have coin to heal themselves. Yep. But before all that happened, we marched up to the commander and we're like, meanwhile the commander's like, of the Hadrians, what's going on? Because all he knows is that he thinks that we're about to go to war with the Suzak Mar because the Suzak Mar has been like scamming us and swindling us or whatever, and they came to fight with us, the Rivlins.
They came to support
to support us. An ally they've established and a person they came to protect are all lined up to fight them for absolutely no reason. Nothing. No reason. And they're like, what are you doing? And we're like, we don't know. The artisans don't support this conflict whatsoever. We've decided that we're going to heal both sides. We can't stop it. We're sorry.
And that's when I really started to get angry with the countess, because just before they came marching down,
she was the one that sent the letters to all of the factions that brought them to conflict.
Right. So it's like very much like, cool, she wants us to fight.
Yeah, and
like,
she was walking back from the Hadrian camp smirking and wonderful, like, oh, look what I've done.
Right. So like I was of the impression, I don't know for a fact because nobody ever said so.
But it was her letter that the bailiff used to start that.
Right. Well, I more mean that told the Hadrians that we were in trouble and that we needed protection.
That was the thing. Like, it was very specifically stated that she sent one letter to us and one letter to them.
Ugh,
so
awful.
that was the letter that sent them to our defense.
To the bloodbath.
That's what it became.
It was such a blood.
So the commander, when we went up and told him these things, he's like, I have the greatest respect for your honor. You will always be welcome amongst the Hadrians and amongst my own home. But you need to keep yourself safe because this is not like, look at the numbers.
Right, yeah.
You need to go. Like, that was when Voltaire came in and kept us safe from like the lingering fighting, paid for people to be healed, and like I went in. I don't think I healed any Rivlins in that fight. I just healed Hadrians because almost every Hadrian went down.
And I kind of stayed in the back where I was like convincing people like, this is wrong, don't shoot, don't whatever, like we don't need to do anything.
So when I first went up to the commander and he was like, we're here to defend you, what's going on? I went back to the Rivlin line and I was like, they're here to defend us. Are you still going to fight them? And the bailiff and all the people in the front were like, yup.
I felt real bad for the Hadrians, and they were pissed too because they thought the Vatican were on their side. So it was very much a betrayal on that part too.
So
which led to a really cool piece of game.
Yeah. So that led to me and Kit being looked upon really fondly by the commanders and the Hadrians in general, which comes up later. But first, like we had some friends in the Hadrians like out of game that told us that after that the Hadrians went back to their camp and they were like so downtrodden because at that point every other faction was against them. A lot of the people playing Hadrians, they didn't come with the kind of mentality of like conquer and kill. They came with the kind of mentality of like, these are children that must be saved. We will lead them to greatness.
Right.
And the commander rallied them.
And was like, you know what? We were betrayed by the Vatican, who said that they would be on our side. So we are gonna go and slaughter them in their camp.
Yeah, we got slaughtered.
Yeah,
they
went straight up SEAL Team 6 in full armor, 90-degree day, like in the woods.
Yeah,
like,
which is really cool because it was one of the ways that because their faction was so small, they really came together as a group.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Rivlins, we were so big.
There were some I'd never talked to.
There were some we never talked to, and also we were constantly having miscommunication and having these big meetings and not knowing what was going on. Meanwhile, the Hadrians were like a well-oiled machine that rolled into the Vatican camp in the middle of the day and just slaughtered.
So we were in like the lunch area, kind of that big open area.
Yeah, and then like a bunch of Vatican come running out, and at first like because their camps come from the same direction.
Yeah.
I thought some Vaticans... My first reaction was some Vaticans had gone into the Hadrian camp and started shit.
Right.
And they had been chased out.
Right.
I had no idea it was the Hadrians who rolled into their camp.
These Vatican come running and they're yelling and they got weapons and every once in a while they have to turn around and try to fight spears off of them and stuff, and they're trying to yell for help for us.
Meanwhile the Hadrians are yelling at the Rivlins like, this doesn't concern you, stay down.
So I remember sitting there and like I had my bow trained on a Hadrian. I'm like, what is this? And he looked at me and goes, revenge. And I go, all right, because I had heard the whole thing, so I'm like, no, I get that.
Yeah, no,
that's fine.
You knew that they had sworn to be allies of the Hadrian, and then straight betrayed them.
So it was like a skirmish right in the middle where nobody
Yeah, I just healed both sides.
And I protected her while she's healing.
That was a really cool moment as well, where like I was trying. There were so many people going down because it was like a more of a skirmish. So it was more evenly. Yeah. It wasn't just one faction got slaughtered.
Right.
It was both sides like going down.
Yeah, butting heads.
So I was healing both sides. And at one point, the fighting kicked off suddenly again. And it started to roll back toward where the injured people were. And I was healing a person. It takes a full minute to heal someone, so I have to stay there. And, like, they were dancing back away from blows, about to, like, roll over us. And I was like, behind you. And you just come in with a sword over the top of me. And you're like, behind you. And he turns around and sees a sword. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, I was like... Other things were, people just kind of flailing and swinging, so I would, like, block things over her head. I'm just like, boom,
from then
boom,
on, you were
boom.
just like, because there was, like, 6 people in the end that, like, I was the only bone knitter that seemed willing to...
Be in the fray.
To heal people.
There's a lot of moments kind of in LARP where you're just like, oh, I could be a badass if I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really cool to play with that space.
Yeah, it lets you experience different parts of yourself through the character that you're playing that you don't normally have the opportunity to. I think that was when we started getting the sword and the countess.
Yeah, so there was a lot of other stuff kind of going on. Like we said, there was a lot of other quests that were happening. So one of them was to get this sword that was supposedly...
It was a monster hunting sword, which by then we had established that the third party that was coming to kill us was most likely monsters.
Right.
So we're like, we need the sword. There was multiple quests out about something that the countess wanted.
Right.
One was a dagger, one was the Earl's crown, and one was the sword. So eventually the story got mixed up. The whole crown thing we explained before, it got mixed up.
Right.
Which you got a quest that she wanted something that had been taken from her, and you thought it was the crown, so you thought it was settled. But then it turns out it was the dagger.
Right.
And then the people who were hunting the sword thought that the sword and the dagger were a combo.
It was a big mixed thing. But long story short, at one point, the Hadrian camp had this sword.
Yeah, they eventually had the sword, and they're like, now we have it. Now no one else can have it. We're keeping it.
Meanwhile, there is a group forming in the Rivlin camp, the Order of the Hawk and Rose, where, there's a stirring speech kind of given or whatever, just as rain starts to fall.
Before that happens... that was the writ of infinite friendship happened before that, because that leads into that. So, after the massacre, me and Kit decided that we wanted, mostly Kit, she's like, I want his promise of infinite friendship in writing. And I'm like, bet, I have writing supplies, let's go get them. So we went up to him and we're like, hey, what you said on the battlefield, can we get that in writing so that anyone can see, like, we can present that to people that we are welcomed by the Hadrians should we need it, like a writ of protection.
Right.
And he's like, of course. So I go get my writing supplies, but then he brings his scribe, and the scribe writes out this writ of protection of basically like all the we got it so that all of the artisans of Rivlin are forever welcome into Hadrian protection and community, as well as his own personal estate and protection and home forever. We're basically forever friends. And then it was basically all of the artisans of Rivlins and those hereby signed. So we also brought in the combatants that had actually helped us during that. So Voltaire and Gareth were the two combatants that facilitated us being able to heal Hadrians and promote neutrality and peace and all that. So we have a writ of infinite friendship, as I will forever call it. So with that established, and all the confusion and everything going on, the Order of the Hawk and Rose formed. Right.
So there's a troops kind of line up, like a bunch of people get together and they're like
20 armed troops.
Right. Line up and they start marching into the woods and it's raining, like downpouring, right?
Yeah, by then.
At this point in time, one of them left their bow outside, so I ran their bow somewhere safe, and we were...
Because you're not supposed to leave bowstrings in the rain.
And we were going, in kind of that direction. We were more just kind of curious as to what they were doing. So we're not part of the group, but we're just kind of following.
Yeah, and then we had the thought of, it didn't seem like they were sending any sort of warning to the Hadrian camp that they were about to march 20 armed troops into their camp after just slaughtering them that morning from our specific faction.
Yeah, and this is kind of cool for me. I just want to touch base on this one just because for me, this was fun. I come back and they've already gone. They're in the woods or whatever, and they're walking.
Mm-hmm.
So I, now in my ranger cloak that I made a couple episodes back.
It was good at water.
My little waterproof ranger cloak.
It kept us dry.
And I'm walking through these woods, and I have no idea which way they went because the path kind of goes off in different directions. So I'm down tracking you through the woods, looking at where your footprints were or whatever. It was the most ranger stuff I've ever done in my life.
I like specifically that not only did you have time to run the bow, get back, track us, find us, us separate from the group while they were still kind of like, which way do we go?
Yeah, they got lost in the rain.
They got lost in the rain and went down the wrong path. And then we knew where we were going, so we just left. And we're like, we should probably go to the Hadrian camp.
Smooth that road
over because like they had good intentions of like there was the Order of the Hawk and Rose was supposed to be a guild that was forming to promote peace and unity.
Communication.
It wasn't
and they wanted to go get that sword we mentioned earlier so that they could use it to fight the monsters they thought were coming.
Yeah, not only just that, they wanted to go announce their presence to the different guilds and specifically the Hadrians because the Hadrians had been slaughtered. But they didn't send a runner to tell the Hadrians that a bunch of armed people were about to march into their camp, so we went.
I want to say this from my perspective, because from my perspective, it's hysterical. So I'm walking with you and our friend Ash that we met there. So we're going, again, downpouring, like sheets of rain.
I tried to protect Ash, but eventually she was just soaked.
So we walk into the Hadrian camp, and they're on edge, understandably. So it's immediately like halt, who goes there type of deal.
Spear, like 4 people with spears going to block us.
And she just wanders on. She goes, "It's fine, I'm a forever friend," and just kind of walks through.
Infinite friends, and I just walk by them.
I'm holding my sword. I'm the only one who can be hurt because they're bone knitters. So I'm looking at them. I go, "Friends, right?" And they're just looking at her like, "What do we do about her?" So they're turning to like try to stop her, and then Voltaire comes out of freaking nowhere.
Yeah, he's like
no,
running down the
everything
Hadrian
is
camp.
fine.
She's with me.
Right?
She's with me.
So then we roll up, and the Hadrian commander is underneath this very like really posh kind of little tent with a throne-ish kind of seat.
For being protected from the rain.
And with the biggest Big D energy, Kit sitting there too, swirling around
like a glass
wine.
of wine sitting from the rain, just like discussing politics with. Because what had happened is earlier, while we were still kind of like going over stuff together, they were seeking out the sword, the monster hunting sword, and eventually it got really too convoluted for me that I was like, I feel like I can go pursue other things because this feels like it's like too convoluted. It seems confusing and too many people are pursuing it. I don't want to step on any toes.
Right.
Meanwhile, Kit and Voltaire had like eventually sought down the sword, got it was in the Hadrian camp, and they were basically working out all of they were talking with the commander about it being lent to the Rivlins to fight monsters. And they had just come to the conclusion of all of that diplomacy and talking through it and getting it. And then we show up, and we roll up and we're like, "Forever friends!" And the commander's like, "What's going on?" Because that's a very dramatic entrance.
Just an FYI, there's 20 people armed coming your way.
Since we are forever friends, I wanted to come and potentially help prevent bloodshed. And he's like, "What?" So I'm like, there's a new guild that's formed called the Order of the Hawk and Rose, and they're of noble intention. They're good intentioned, but I just wanted to come warn you that they're about to march into your camp, a bunch of 20 armed people.
Just as she finishes saying this, they come out of the woods.
We have a decent conversation about it, and I kind of get it.
I thought it happened pretty quick from where I was.
We had the whole noble debate as well, where he thought that they were trying to instill that they were nobles.
Right. Yeah.
And then as he's coming to the point where he's like, okay, I guess, like, because they had just had another guild come in, which much
and
more
try to forcibly take the sword.
Take the sword. Only the rain chased them away. And they had just come to the conclusion of all the diplomatic talks of giving the sword to the Rivlins. Not even giving, but like letting a Hadrian wield it
for them. Yeah.
But be with the Rivlins. And then as the conversation is coming to an end, I'm easing it through. Then over the hill comes more than 20 people, because they've picked up people along the way, under his banner, all armed. And those poor Hadrian people that were guarding,
the guards, they were like,
oh god! Who just, like,
had earlier that day been slaughtered by those same people who are marching up the hill.
The same people who had slaughtered them for no reason, and now there's a bunch of them marching up the hill. And I'm like discussing it with the commander, and he just looks past me and he goes, really? That many people? And I'm like, yeah. And I turn around and I'm like, that was more than what they started with, but yeah, no, I on my word, as forever friends, I put my word on the line. That's a big deal. When
contractually obligated.
Yeah, all I have is my word. I was like, they're here on peaceful terms. I understand everything that happened before, but know that I don't support violence, but they're not here for violence. And he was like, okay. And then, like, the guards are going forward with their spears. He's like, boys?
Yeah, he did. Boys!
Come here! And all the spear dudes are like, okay. And they came back. And then there was this epic scene in the rain where, like, they came up with the banner and they discussed, like, we're here for the sword. And they're like, yeah, no, we'll let you take a Hadrian wield the sword, because that was all the work that Kit and Voltaire had done to, like,
to make that happen.
Make that happen. And then they all marched off. And me, like, we were all just kind of, like, watching them all go off, like, look what we did. Because, like, we diplomacied it. We had smoothed it over.
So, and that's kind of the fun bit, too, because, again, your game is your game, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, well, you've got these really broad, sweeping actions that are very kind of flash or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's also, like, just this little web behind the scenes of people doing political intrigue and chatting and spying.
That started all the way from the very first night of me joking with the commander, like, going through the effort of not only hunting down the corkscrew to open the mead, but, like, joking with him, bringing him drink, like, getting to know his in command, bringing them information, led up to him being trusting enough. He trusted me enough to let over 20 armed people of the same people that had slaughtered him for absolutely no reason that morning
just wander into the camp,
march in military formation.
They were in straight up formation in the pouring rain.
Camp. And he was like, really? And I'm like, I know. You gotta trust me on this, dude.
So it gets very, very epic very quick. We're coming on, right? Mm-hmm.
So in the middle of all this, me and Voltaire, Kit ended up being part of it later, but not, like, we ended up making friends with a Hadrian. It was a Hadrian sage.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got her name. But we ended up making friends with this Hadrian sage, and we all came to the conclusion that, having watched all of that happen,
it's the countess's fault.
It was the countess's fault, because she was the one that was giving everyone the jobs to make all the factions fight against each other. We were being manipulated, pulled by the strings. Basically, she was the spider that was pulling at the web.
Right.
And we understood there was some sort of outside force that she must be facilitating, but we didn't understand what. So we couldn't fight her because she was a non-combatant. So we decided to charm her with one of the spells called Friends, which basically, for like 4 or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, this person is convinced that you're are their best friend.
Yeah.
So the sage, like, I think I bring out my little notepad, and we all sit down with the countess, and she puts the card on the table. And it was really epic. She's just like, hello, friend. And we start, and she's like, these are my fellow friends. Treat them as you would treat me. And we all start questioning her. And we find out that she's been taking a lot of jobs, not only from, like, the factions that are here, but a major part of all the jobs to split up the factions and drive us against each other and generally weaken us have been coming from the monsters, like the orcs and
right,
the trolls,
the cursed
and
creatures
the
who are out in the
cursed
woods.
creatures have united into their own faction, and they've decided, especially against the Rivlins, who, like, we were the ones who lived there and have been fighting and hunting them
forever.
Yeah, that there is crimes that need to be repaid, and that they want to slaughter all of us. And that they're going to do that by first turning all the factions against each other, and then once we're weakened, roll in and kill us. So, Evelyn, ever the diplomat, is basically like, but if they're smart enough to come to you, like the Thieves Guild, and put together this whole plot of pitting us against each other, surely, like, when no one has ever attempted diplomacy, like, neither of us have ever tried to talk to each other. We've just been like, we see them as the evil as well. It's possible to even just have that conversation to figure out, like, where the lines are, who has wronged who, because, like, information is never bad for either side.
Right. So the plan was...
So, the countess to set up a meeting between... She's like, if you want, I can set up a meeting between you and my contacts with them so you can talk about that.
But I wasn't supposed... Nobody else was supposed to know. It was going to be her, Voltaire, and
the Hadrian.
And the Hadrian.
Sage.
So she... Because of the relationship between our characters, she tells me on the side, and we come up with a plan.
I was literally specifically told, like, if anyone finds out about this, the monsters might call off whatever, so you can't tell anyone. I was like, I'm not about to go into the woods without my sneaky ranger friend.
So I was going to sneak and follow.
So I pulled you in the tent, and I was like, listen. Because you had heard Voltaire, tell me about it, and you're like, what's going on? I'm like, I can't tell you. But then in our tent, I was like, listen, this is what might happen. I'm going to need you to be your best sneaky self. Like, genuinely not be seen and just follow behind in case something happens. And then in the meantime, we bought a bunch of, like, Bane spells, which repel. If you cast Bane, then cursed creatures have to avoid you. We bought potions. We prepared for it to go bad. We gave, I think Voltaire was a warrior. He did a really, really self-sacrifice thing where he was like, listen to the both of us. Me and the Hadrian sage. He's like, if something goes wrong, I want you both to run. And we're like, what do you mean? He's like, I will hold them off as long as possible, but if something goes wrong, there's no way we can win against cursed creatures. I want you both to run so that you can bring this information to everyone else and also get out safely. We're like, we're not going to leave you. He's like, I'm not going to just fight. I'm going to run
This isn't a martyr.
This isn't a martyrdom, but I want you guys to not, like, don't try to save me, basically. And we're like,
so that's the plan. Now I want to take the reins of the story from here, because I think we should split this story up a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have that established. I know my job. My job is when I see them start to go off onto their little mission, I follow.
Yeah.
And I stealthily.
To a potentially very deadly mission.
Right? So, okay. A meeting gets called.
We established earlier that a cursed creature, like, ignores armor, basically.
Yeah, you're screwed.
They're so deadly.
Yeah, it takes a way crazy amount of hits to get them down, and they get like 2 swipes on you and you're done. So another meeting gets called. So we all go to this meeting.
A big Rivlin meeting.
A big everyone meeting.
In
like
the meantime,
all of the factions get
I
called
had
to a
been
single
talking
meeting.
to kind of people, and you saw me running around helping people.
She was running, and I was like, okay, this is still, it was taking a little bit for this thing to pop off. So we get into this meeting, and we're having it, and I notice she's not there. And so I'm immediately like, holy crap, is it going on right now? And I need to get there and do my job. So
you have no idea where that would be.
No idea where she is. Meanwhile, some of the other people in that same meeting are like, hey, where's this person or where's that person or whatever. But there was a lot of other quests going on, so we all just kind of assumed that people were questing.
People weren't always at the meetings.
No. So after the meeting, I roll up, and I still can't find her anywhere. And I know the only other person who would know where this thing is happening is the countess.
Because she would have been the one to send us on it.
So I march over towards her, and I catch the very end of a conversation where she was basically asking somebody for a bribe. Like, well, information for money is always possible. So I immediately roll over with coins in hand and go, where's my bone knitter? And she's like, isn't it interesting how she's not the only one who's missing, and actually some from every other camp might be gone too? And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden we hear drums start, and like people start marching, and smoke bombs start going off. And she looks real smugly over there and looks back at me and goes, I think your friend's back. And that's where I'll go to you and say what has been happening from there.
So, in the end, because of all the rain and everything that happened, we didn't get to do the diplomacy quest. We had some people come up to us out of character and be like, hey, we know you planned for this and all that, but because of all the logistical things, we're going to have to merge this with something we already had planned. Because the diplomacy was something that Evelyn kind of... They weren't expecting people to want to talk to the monsters.
Right.
Evelyn wants to talk to the monsters. So they were planning for the monsters to kidnap a bunch of people, perform a ritual on them that basically makes them like controlled and possessed, and then turn against their friends and fight them. That was the monster's final plan, to sweep in and, like, with the factions at each other's throats and everyone weakened, to sweep in and slaughter people. In this kind of, like, epidemic of peace, probably, so it ricochets and everyone turns against each other. So it was, like, through talking to them, we came up with the story of, like, okay, so because I've already kind of told people that we were going on the diplomacy mission, what's the story of it? And the story of it is basically we go... diplomatize.
Yep, that's a word.
And it's a straight trap. They just like they didn't even talk to us. They just kidnap us and ritualize, and I end up possessed.
Yep.
So what they do is they bring us all over to the side while everyone's still there. Just kind of that's when I was running around. Is like I had extra makeup and stuff to help people face, mark that they were possessed. So I was running back and forth, and you were like, she's fine. She's helping people. Like, I was talking to the bailiff.
Yeah, you're running all the time anyways.
Yeah, I ran everywhere. I broke my shoes, but we'll get to that. Old elf shoes. So they brought us off the side. They marked us all as possessed, and they basically told us, like, the point of the fight isn't for them to beat you. It's to beat the orcs, who are the ones possessing you. So, kind of, you're allowed to ignore the rules when it comes to armor, especially with me. Because I had no armor, and if I was going to go fight a bunch of people who also knew what they were doing, I would just go down immediately. So they're like, you can even do stuff like grab a sword as they swing it towards you, and then stab them. Like, just be epic and give them something to overcome until they figure out that they need to overcome the orcs.
Right.
Once they get the orcs, then the possession's broken and everyone wins. And also, when we went down... we were supposed to have, like, a call that would go out that would resurrect everyone.
Right.
Like, every once in a while, the necromancer would be like, rise, my minions! And we would all get back up. Yeah. And when we were down, we were supposed to act like we were still writhing and still there. So then we start to march out, and they start throwing out smoke bombs. And ironically, the guy who played the head guard of the Hadrians, who Evelyn had a connection to, he was playing like a new character now, more robed and stuff. He was very tall. So I hid behind him because I was very obviously not a combatant and had made myself very known. So if they saw me walk out with swords, the game would be up. It would be an immediate, like, the confusion would be gone. They'd be like, something's wrong.
Right.
So I hid. Also, I specifically didn't want you to see. I spotted you, and I was like, cool, him between me and you. Because I didn't want you to see me yet.
So I want to go back to my side then.
Yes.
So they're marching down, and it is epic, right? Like, everybody's like, holy crap, because we just came from this meeting. We didn't have our weapons. Some people didn't have their armor on. Like, it was just mass confusion of everybody trying to get ready for this thing that's about to happen. So they're marching down. I grab I had my stuff. So I grab my bow and my arrows, and I stick some in the ground, and I'm waiting. And then the onslaught. Like, first of all, those orcs were like a wrecking ball because
like they're like one of those groups that like trains together.
Yeah,
they know
they were good. So even when you like stand in a line and you're there, like it takes so many hits to get them and so few for them to get you that they can just with impunity walk right through you and they're just slashing,
not only that, they're trained fighters.
Yeah,
so, like.
And so they're
they
good
knew what
too.
They were doing, and the rules favored them, so they were a force to be reckoned.
Meanwhile, all these other people are coming in, so we're kind of
and you never know
fighting.
Unless you see their face, if they're possessed or not. So there was always this confusion where like I would have people full walk past me because I looked like a bone knicker.
Yeah,
I didn't look threatening, even though I was holding swords. They would go straight past me, and I would just stab in the back, and they turn and go, what?
So for me, I go running, and like I can't. The problem with a quiver on your back is sometimes it's hard to get the arrows. So I run because a bunch of people are coming. I run and I stop hard so all my arrows fall out. And I pick up a bow and I go to shoot somebody just in time for the crowds to part. and this one is standing there with 2 blades, and we meet eyes.
Yeah, no, there was this moment where like you're panicking, getting ready, and the crowd parts, and because I don't know what I'm doing with combat yet, so I'm still getting a feel for it. And you're an archer, so we're both at the ends of our, like, the back of our groups. And I'm standing somewhat normally, like surveying the crowd. You have this moment where the crowd parts and you see me first.
Yeah.
And you're like, there she is.
Right.
And then I turn and see you, and you see the black marks all over my face.
Yeah, and then she gets into like a little fight stance.
And then I get my little fight stance.
And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. With my 2 little swords. And we don't break eye contact the entire length of the field. Yeah. I just walk at you.
And meanwhile, there's like mayhem all around me,
yeah,
right?
It was almost like this pocket of, like, you
quiet.
weren't attacked.
Yeah.
This little pocket of quiet where we just, like, these 2 characters that were very close with each other, very close friends, relied on each other throughout not only the banquet and all the chaos, but the war and the year of peace since then. And you had just heard stuff, like there was an orc near you that we've established are terrifying.
Yep.
He was shouting at people.
He was close. Yeah, he just said, "Get the archers!"
And you're an archer.
I'm holding the bow the entire time, very much an archer. Just standing there, pointing at her as she's walking.
You don't point it at me in the beginning. Like, you turn and you see me, and I'm halfway to you before you draw it, and you point it directly at me, and I don't stop. I just keep walking at you. I don't even run or anything. I just walk quickly. I'm like, and then I get within 10 feet of you, and Gareth can't shoot her.
No, I couldn't do it. So, like, sitting there, I see her, and I had just ahead of time, I learned, because it was the first battle where I really had to use my spells. And this is where, again, the spells are cool. I didn't think I would like them. They're on these little paper cards, right? And to use them, you have to rip them. So I had just taken the most important one for the situation I was in, Bane.
Which technically I had bought you.
Yeah.
Because it was for the diplomacy thing.
Yeah. So what Bane does is if you use it, anybody who's cursed or any of the cursed creatures, they avoid you. They just don't want anything to do with you. They'll move away from you. So I had put it in my mouth. So I'm sitting there, and I just put it there to kind of hold it because I didn't have the other hands because I was an archer. So I'm holding it, and she's walking, and they just kind of had that moment where he just couldn't shoot her.
Because she was his friend.
Yeah, so he kind of puts it down and just trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? And she's drawing
like within
the
5 feet of you.
Yeah. I rip it in my mouth because the only way I could rip it. And I say what spell it is. But in doing so, it kind of spits the spell out. And I love it because it goes... that
little shard of the paper in your mouth just spits out and you go, Bane.
Yeah, I go,
and
Bane.
I stop. Mostly because in that moment... I don't know what Bane means. But it takes a moment for me to remember what the spell does, because I wasn't expecting to be in combat.
Yeah.
But roleplay wise, there's just this moment of really tense eye contact where I just freeze.
And I genuinely didn't know if it would work if she was considered a cursed creature or not.
And then I turn and I go away.
Yeah. So it was just that moment of like, holy crap, like I got to deal with this soon.
And then immediately
I hear, ah, and I turn, and this man with a human-sized sword is running as fast and hard as he can at me, screaming. And I jumped backwards and like dodge roll. It was like Dark Souls.
He hit you so hard he broke your bow.
Yeah, he hit my bow. He ended up hitting the bow, and the bow just friggin' exploded. The string came undone, right? And I don't have my sword out yet, so I'm rolling away from him.
So your sword
my sword is sticking, and I'm trying to get away from him, and I finally get it out, and we're fighting. Which, had I had my wits about me, I could have been like, I'm baned right now. Like, you can't attack me, right? But I didn't have that.
It was an epic fight.
It was an epic fight, yeah.
I was fighting other people.
Yeah, survived that, and then eventually...
So, in the meantime, I was figuring out what it was like to be in combat. Because, not only do you have, fighting experience outside LARP, I don't.
Right.
So, I got myself described to me later as if someone had given me 2 really big kitchen knives and I was having a blast. I was just
Stabby McStabberson.
So I knew that I couldn't fight people head on because everyone was generally very well trained with the use of it. So instead, I would seek out the most difficult combatants. And that seems like a counterproductive thing. But I would seek out the people who were already fighting someone.
Yeah, it stretched their attention.
So what I would do is I would wolf pack tactic them. I'm fast. I'm nippy.
Yeah.
So I would circle around them and nip in, nip out. And they have pole arms. So they're desperately sweeping it back and forth, trying to get like between the person who knows what they're doing in front of them versus me who's just distracting them. And I can totally nip in and stab in the back. I can do that. To the point that the person in front of them would be able to come in and just demolish them.
Yeah.
So then Gareth finishes his fight with the sword person, puts him down.
In the meantime, I don't have my bow, and I see her causing trouble. And I'm like, you know what? I have to at least put her down because somebody else is going to, like, straight up kill her. Whereas then Gareth will put her down and make sure she's okay and then try to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So
you come in and hit me hard, like, tap, like, you hit me twice in passing as you go by.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even see you coming.
Yeah.
And then you spin and, like, relax, expecting me to go down because I'm not wearing armor.
Yeah, so technically, those 2 hits should have taken her out. I didn't know they had the thing where they could be hit way more times. So I kind of relaxed that one, like, all right, she's going to go down.
And then I hit you.
And then she stabs me, and I'm like, what?
And then you stab me once more.
So I hit her again.
And then I stab you again, because, like, you relax again, expecting, like, okay, well, maybe the 2 didn't put you down, but this one will.
Yeah.
And then I stab you again. And then I get to watch, because, like, by this point, you had just been fighting, a difficult fight.
Right.
Even though you had gone through mage armor, which gives you more armor points.
Right.
He was 1 hit away
from going down.
From going down himself.
Yeah.
So I got to watch his face go from, I don't want to fight my friend, let me put you down as quickly as possible, to, I am going to murder you now. Because it became a survival aspect for him.
Yeah. And then it was flurry of blows.
And then he punted me down a hill. Like, he went from, like, tap, tap, to, like, I went down that hill so hard.
Like ass over tea kettle.
That, like I went this way till my feet went, I have a specific memory of flipping. I was airborne for a moment.
Yep.
And then, like, my feet went over me. And I continued down that hill.
Yep.
You punted me.
I got her real good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so you're not gonna go down. I'm gonna make you.
And he had that really nice moment where he kind of went back to her and was just like, I will fix this.
Yeah, so what happened
We're gonna make
is
it okay.
You came up to me, and the first thing you did was kick my swords out of my hands.
Because if you've seen any horror movie, you know they're gonna get back up, so you don't let them have their blades. It just makes sense.
Is that in LARP, like, I had made the roleplay decision to act like I was dead on the ground. Also, those swords weren't mine.
Well,
so, like, him kicking them off to be trampled by other people, not knowing that I was going to get resurrected. He also stole one of them.
I needed that one because after that happened, the dude with the big sword got up again.
Came back.
I just finished putting her down. I hear, again. And I turn, and he's just running back at me. So, like, and again, he, like, exploded into me. Like, it was like, slam, as hard as he could. And I go flying. So again, it's rolling, and I have 2 swords in my hand now, though. So I'm way better able to, like, deal with his nonsense. But yeah.
He didn't know we were going to get back up. So
no idea. Yeah.
In the meantime, like, originally we were supposed to have, like, a call or something to get us back up. That's what it told us. But I guess we were too far away from, like, the arena pit, which is where the orcs were, to hear it. So I just laid there.
Right.
And, like, every once in a while, you'd look back, and she's like, she's still there.
Yep.
But there was this really nice moment, like, when you first put me down, where after you kicked the swords out of my hands, where you kind of leaned over, and you were kind of muttering to yourself, was like, I can fix this. I can fix, don't worry, Nits, I can fix this. And I remember hearing you talk to, like, a female bone knitter of, like, can you heal her?
Right.
And she was like, I don't know. I don't know if I heal her, if she's going to get up and just stab us again. And and you were like, shit, and then you just kind of, like, stood over me for a moment and was like, stay there, Nits. Yeah. I can fix this. And then ran off. It
was around that time, too, when people started saying that you have to kill the orcs. Like, people started to yell, like, you have to take down the orcs. The orcs are controlling them. You have to take down the orcs. So I was like, new goal, kill all the orcs.
Meanwhile, I had to have one of the other cursed people walk up to me and just like, you know, you're supposed to get up. So I got up, and that was when you turned and saw me get up, and you're like, nope, you're going right back down again, because Nits doesn't need to get hurt by someone else. So you ran at me, and I went, no, where are my swords?
So I give her swords back.
Yeah, so you have to help me, we had to break character for you to help me look for the sword that you punted off into the distance.
I still think it was the right decision.
Those weren't my swords.
I don't care.
If someone had, like, trampled on them.
Again.
So I get my swords. We have a moment where we kind of look at each other, and we both kind of decide to go in separate directions because we've broken character, and now it'd be weird to start fighting.
Yeah.
So we just run in different directions.
Right.
And I don't see you for the rest of the fight.
Yeah, so for where I go from there, I go back to where I last spotted my bow, where that dude packed my lunch. And I find it and restring it and gather arrows. My arrows are all gone at this point. Other archers have grabbed them, whatever. So I just scoop up arrows and I run to where the orcs are. They've gotten themselves into the arena and they're fighting. Meanwhile, I pass by Beryl, who's having his own epic moment, Kramer from Living Anachronism, where like him and another person are fighting like the orcs, the cursed creatures. And it is like he does like a spin move and hits and he's blocking, lands it. Like it was epic. It was really, really great.
I take down the Earl a few times.
Yeah, and this is where I learned that like I've done archery since I was a kid. I enjoy archery, but this is where I learned I can shoot a moving person like every single time. Like
you said the only one you missed was like
Yeah, so there was one time I go to shoot not an orc, but one of the cursed people.
Yeah, and they move last
minute, and it ended up like friendly firing somebody who was already on the ground. He was already down, but we had just a like almost a break character moment where he's like, ah, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. He's like, but why? I'm like, I'm sorry. But so I'm shooting the orcs who are in the arena, and I got this one orc. I really didn't mean there to be like just straight up headshots, but it just every time it hit him square in the temple, like boom. He goes, boom. He's like, I had another one where this person was just about to get murked by one of the cursed people. Sword goes up, and from like across the way, like a long shot. I get him, and I get him right underneath here. So much so that one of the girls who were down goes, that was a great shot! I was like, thank you! But I'm running around just in time to hear another friend we made, Liam. He's in a bad way. He's like just an archer. He didn't have anything else ready to go, basically, and he's out of arrows completely. He's like, I need arrows! Just as I'm running by the pile of arrows.
That people have been kind of like throwing arrows onto to keep them
So there's like 20 arrows. So in full stride, I grab arrows, I slide to where he's at, and I just throw arrows down for the both of us. And he's like, you're amazing! Armor! And he casts mage armor just in time for like the onslaught to come back.
And then you went back to back and were like shooting people. Yeah, we were back to back going,
but like holding people off while we're there.
Yeah,
and
because
then
like arrows in that game hit hard. Like they can take a person down in one shot.
Yeah. So we're taking people down. Meanwhile, Ash like shows up just like she's healing in the middle of it. She's a bone knitter.
So and she's like, I'm in the worst place to be. Oh, speaking of Ash, there was another moment. So there was like, in the mix of all the adrenaline and everything, there's like multiple moments that stick out to me from when I was in combat, which is like when the crowd split and we first saw each other, like our whole interaction. And there was I had a similar moment with Ash, where when I got to the arena, the crowd kind of split and we met eyes, and I got to watch her face, because like our characters had become friends over the event. So I got to watch her go, oh no, as she realized that I had become one of the cursed creatures. And then the crowd kind of came back together, and I didn't see her again until she was the one that
healed you up.
That when the orcs had finally been killed and I lay on the ground, she was the one that came over with her little charm and was healing me, and she was talking to me like, you haven't been yourself recently. But everything's gonna be okay. See, look, the madness is leaving your eye. No, it's still there. No,
still
it's coming
crazy.
Back. No, it's still a little crazy. No, there it goes. See, you're gonna be all right.
So, and this is kind of an in-game, out-of-game moment, but so everybody went down and she's being healed. She's just about to get back up, and I swear to God, the biggest spider I've ever seen in my life crawls on her. And Ash sees it, I see it, somebody across the way goes, oh my God!
What is that?
It was huge. So I'm like, in a moment, because I didn't want her to like see it and be like, oh crap! So I grab the spider and I move it down. But it was like, even for me, I have no problem with spiders. It was like, this is a really big spider in my hands. It was huge, yo.
Yeah, there was a bunch of spiders in our tent eventually, and you were just like, goodbye.
Yeah. Man.
But I did avoid all the ticks.
Yeah, man, there were ticks and poison ivy, plenty.
Yeah, I avoided both.
Yeah, but
which is impressive, because I rolled all over that ground.
You did roll all over that ground.
But yeah, so there was that moment of, like, kind of an emotional moment where I was healed, where they told us before we were all possessed. It's like, hey, so this is the story of it. None of you are gonna remember the, like, being possessed.
What you did.
You can choose if memories come back to you, because they wanted to leave it open if people didn't want, like, the trauma of attacking their friends and being controlled to be, like, with them.
Right, to destroy their character, basically.
Yeah. So, like, the first thing Evelyn comes back to is, like, she wakes up to Gareth standing over because you had just deposited the spider and came back.
Yeah.
And Ash, like, healing her, like, her two friends. She's like, why am I holding swords? Why does everything hurt? Like, to Gareth looking beat up.
Yeah. I had a rough go of that fight, man.
Beat up.
Yeah.
And, like, holding swords. And her instinctual thing is to, like, hand the swords to Gareth.
I think my instinctual thing was to call you a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so, like, upon the immediate, like, why am I holding swords? Like, I am normal. Gareth just goes, you're a pain in the ass, and then walks away.
He had to decompress that moment. It was
reestablish himself. Meanwhile, Evelyn, like, it was a big moment for her, because in that moment of kind of, she spent the entire event literally constantly running around,
fighting too,
like non-stop, to the point that people called me a hummingbird. Stopping fighting, trying to find peace, fighting for like unity and all that, and then for the end of the event to be her being forced against her will to facilitate violence for violence sake.
Yeah.
And then waking up to that. And for a while, it was very discombobulating to her because she didn't remember anything. And everyone just went back to acting normal.
Right.
And she was like, this doesn't feel normal. It feels like everyone's telling me I did a bad thing and there's evidence of it, but everyone's just acting normal. And like, Gareth immediately tried to go back to normal because that's who he is. He's like, don't think about the bad thing. Go back to...
Bad thing doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. So you, like... It wasn't until, and like in the midst of that, in the midst of like Evelyn kind of like being like beaten down and all the, like the antithesis of everything she had fought for, then everyone around was like, for unity and all that, and like we should all work together, and Evelyn, like everything she's fought for and whatever, and she's so like shell-shocked in this moment she can't even like be part of it.
Right.
And then it was until we went back to the tent to wipe off the makeup from my face, and Gareth like had a moment where like he let the normality slip, and he was like, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
But she was like able to accept that
a bad thing happened.
The bad thing happened, and like she move on from it.
Yeah, that's and again, I know I've said it before like a few times during this, but it's very much, you very much get lost in the character. Like there isn't a moment in which I was being like, oh, this would be an interesting scene if we do it this way or this way. It's just like, no.
To the point that like anyone who would break character, it felt very foreign.
Yeah, you kind of look at them for a second like, that was weird.
Like you're like,
it's jarring.
It
becomes
becomes
super jarring.
When they do so.
Yeah.
When you're in that kind of game where like immersion and storytelling and roleplay and everything is held to a standard.
Yeah. And kind of for the rest of people kind of lightened up on that for the rest of the LARP, because that was basically the
big
story,
and they told us after like that we don't really have any other big story planned, but you're free to like roleplay amongst yourselves.
Right. Know
that like the rest of the LARP, we were still expecting you guys to hold yourself to character. No one did. Like after that big game was done, we all just kind of relaxed into just drinking, eating, singing.
Yeah, it was
like
fun. It was good.
We just talked about the event that we had at that point.
Yeah, there were a lot of trading stories. Some of us, like, I remained in character the whole time. We traded stories
for a while. Like after the fight, we kind of tried to figure out the space of like. I remember even kind of going like, are we in character or out of character? We're like, I guess we just feel it out as we go.
Yeah. But it was still fun. It was nice just to kind of decompress with the people that you just kind of had a war with.
We had such a good night around the campfire. I brought marshmallows, and I was so excited to roast them. And then we forgot the first night because it was so busy.
Yeah.
It was like till 3 a.m.
Yeah, roasting marshmallows was the stuff.
Yeah, so he went and made sticks to roast marshmallows. We made a whole nother campfire.
Just for roasting marshmallows.
Just for roasting marshmallows.
For like the RP, like they're from the marsh,
which is just south of the village that both of our both of our characters spent the year of peace in.
They grow on like cattail kind of things. They're mallows from the marsh.
I think I specifically made them like from the mallow root that they were. Like,
that's right. Yeah, mallow root. Yeah, that's right.
But we share, like, everyone had marshmallows. We had people bring in with like different liquors, and we just share different liquors.
Yeah.
There was a running joke in the Rivlins, which originally a lot of people were really annoyed with because it was kind of like a break of immersion, where because the Rivlins had so many meetings,
just so many meetings,
that eventually we needed like one of those talking sticks, and then the only thing someone had on them was a banana. So like the talking banana. So
then everybody, whoever had the banana, had the floor. They could talk.
Yeah, right? But then, like, it became a running joke, like to the point where people were like, "Can we please stop
the banana?
Stop with the banana." But then once the final battle was over, that was when we picked up the joke. We're like everyone was kind of chill and whatever. It didn't mean anything anymore. We're like, bananas. like
also, we had hoarded bananas the entire time just because you had food in general.
So yeah, like there were some logistical problems in the sense that like lunch, the main day, was a little bit delayed. But I had over-prepared and brought a bunch of food.
So much
food. So at some point, some people started to come up to me and were like complaining about like being hungry, and I was like, time for fake Rivlin lunch.
She gave it away for free, but people decided to tip her. She's like, but I'll accept tips.
Not for real money, for like silver in-game
money. But she made
took from me
so much money.
I made like 60 silver.
We had those bars from Cliff.
Bars from the House of Cliff.
From the House of Cliff.
Yeah, so I had Cliff bars, I had Nature Valley bars, both the crunchy and the like trail mix ones. I had beef jerky. I had apples. I in the beginning I had strawberries and bananas as well. And then I had someone else came over and donated clementines that first day.
You took it and they wrapped them all in like cheesecloths, so they weren't like in wrappers.
Yeah. So
they looked they looked correct.
And awesome. I had gotten some cheesecloth and some burlap and twine and those little cards you can put on it. I wrote all the allergens on them and like what they were, and I wrapped so many bars. Me and my mom the
paid
night
off though.
The night before we flew to the LARP in a 5 a.m. flight, which I also edited the glove video that night. It was a night. And then we had to figure out the logistics of how to get everywhere the next day. So, in the midst of all that, I don't even remember how I became the banana queen.
You just became the food person, but the thing is like the food that they had were fruit or whatever.
People kept bringing bananas to our tent.
Yeah. Like, we'd open our door,
and there was just food.
Bananas everywhere.
Yeah, like, people would just, if they didn't want to eat their banana from lunch or dinner, they would just bring their banana and put it in our tent. I think because they thought I'd distribute it, but eventually after that drinking night, like, the whole third day, while we were packing up everything, we would just come back to more bananas. Because it became a thing of, like, I took a banana, and I was having this debate with a Suzek Mar guy, where I was like, we were making it a cultural thing for Rivlin that like we like
anything roasted on a stick.
We like roasting food on a stick over a fire, and I was like, any food can be roasted on a stick over a fire, and he was like, bet. Jelly, and I'm like, put it in another food, roast it over the fire, and he was like, fair. So I was like, here, watch me roast this banana over the fire. So I took a banana, still with the skin on, because it would have fallen apart otherwise. And I just stuck it through the middle. Like, not even, like, through the whole thing. Like, just through the middle. And I put it over the fire for a while. Yeah. Until it was, like, glowing at the hole that I stuck it through. And then I took it out, and I opened it. And it was just a warm banana. It wasn't even cooked at all.
This is what we learned. Bananas are impervious to fire.
Yeah, the skin was so thick that, like, I held it in the fire for a while, and it was just warm. It was
just whatever.
It wasn't even hot. Yeah. It was just warm. So I ate a warm banana, and then from then on, I became the banana queen.
Yep.
Where, like, the entire third day, I think Liam brought me a banana as an offering. And he was like, I bring you this banana.
Beryl hated the bananas.
So
Beryl hated bananas so much.
That was back when it was like actual serious game.
Yeah.
And people kept bringing it up
it
as
was
like a
breaking emotion for sure.
We only made it a joke after the game had been done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Liam brought me a banana, and he was like, an offering of friendship. And I was like, thank you. And then I ate the banana, and then I brought him a banana, and I'm like, we are now banana brothers. We have eaten of each other's bananas. We made this whole lore thing that Rivlins can't speak unless they have bananas on their person.
It is present.
Or like have consumed a banana recently.
We want to make jewelry
like a preserved banana, like a little pendant, and like the more wealthy you are, like in
bigger
in
the
resin,
banana.
there's like a piece of banana. The more wealthy you are, and eventually bananas go extinct in Rivlin culture because they eat them all, and they have this was all happening over the campfire that night as we were drinking.
It's just
and joking
random
with people.
bullcrap. Yeah.
Like. And then people have to like trade for banana pendants, or else you can't speak as a Rivlin. And the reason why we trusted the Suzak Mar so much is their color is yellow and they look like banana people.
It's so stupid.
It was just this whole night of just drinking, eating marshmallows, eating bananas,
singing songs.
It was
really
people
fun.
kept bringing more.
Yeah.
Like, I brought this bottle of liquor,
Yep.
and we're like. Yes!
Come forth, sit with us and drink the liquors.
We will tell you stories in exchange for liquor. It was, I think the last night was definitely my favorite night.
Yeah.
Where it was just all of that tension and payoff and everything, and it still felt like we were in our characters, and just being able to experience them in a joyful and lighthearted moment rather than all of
like
everything.
those characters were relaxing too. Like it was very much like we've just been through a thing. We're all together. It was the first time that we all, as like all the different factions, like came to our camp, and we were all just kind of hanging out together and having fun. But yeah, I mean, the next day after that was just us kind of packing up.
So much packing.
So much packing.
It was set up to be almost like the third day would be more LARP. Only packing. Everyone was only packing.
Because it took so
much to pack up. Yeah. That's another thing to plan for. How long and how organized you need to be to put your stuff back together to leave.
Yeah, I'm sure if you drove there, if you live locally, just shove it all in your car and deal with it later on. But we had to like catch flights, like they had to fit back in our luggage, so it took a while to do. And then we just kind of like, us, Kramer from Living in Anachronism, some of the other folks we met, we just went out to dinner. Like, we shared an Airbnb together.
Yeah, we just talked about the game and went back to an Airbnb and just slept. That's another thing that, like, if you do go to a LARP, something to keep in mind is that a lot of people experience not only, like, physical exhaustion of being out in the sun and everything, but also, like, there's an emotional whiplash that comes with it.
Yeah.
Of spending an entire weekend, like... We talked earlier in part 1 about how any sort of roleplay game like D&D or LARP can be somewhat emotionally vulnerable. Yeah. And when you spend an entire weekend and you really throw yourself into being a completely different person and you meet people and you make good friends and whatever, and then suddenly it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
And it's something that you have to keep in mind as you leave the LARP, is that can be a little bit of an emotional whiplash.
Yeah, that is really jarring. Like, to your point too, not only are you kind of taken away from, you've just really kind of got comfortable into your skin and the people around you.
The first LARP we went to, first of that LARP, the first of these characters.
It was this weird moment where like
we didn't know where to be emotionally.
Yeah, and those people you met, like, at the last day when you're not in character and you're just talking to them just as themselves, it's almost like meeting a new person again. Like, you're just like, oh, like, cool, this is what you do, this is who you are, this is like, so it's this weird moment where you've gotten really close to these people,
but it's that
who are different people, but you still like them, like they're still there, but it's just like,
most people's characters are just an aspect of themselves.
Yeah. That piece you like to amplify.
Unless Liam asks, then I'm the worst person outside LARP, and as soon as I leave those gates, then I am
mass
the worst
murderer.
Mass murderer.
Yeah. Hi, Liam.
Hi, Liam.
Also, hi, Liam's mom.
Hi, Liam's mom. Excuse you, I got closer to Liam's mom.
Well, I mean, I could be Liam's dad. I think we've established. Anyways, so yeah, it's. I will do it again. I recommend if you're on the fence at all, 100% do it.
Yeah, like if there's different types of LARPs. There's the more combat-based ones, and there's the more role-play-based ones. Don't judge one off of the other. So say you've been to a more combat-based one, like try the spectrum. Like there's like we tend to enjoy more of the role-play aspect of it. If we went to more of like a battle game one, we probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. Not saying we wouldn't have had fun, but it would have been a different experience.
Yeah, and it's the same when we play D&D.
Yeah, there's different D&D games. There's different tabletop games in general.
Right.
They should be treated as kind of different systems, and it's such a good experience that you really shouldn't close yourself off to potentially experiencing that.
Yeah.
Because you maybe went to one that wasn't to your taste.
Or you never gone to one and your only experience is someone yelling lightning bolts on a YouTube video,
Which in of itself is a fun game.
Yeah, that's a fun game for sure. And that's, again, looking at it from the outside. Because I guarantee you the people who were playing that game were having a blast.
Feel it.
They were having fun.
If you were to look at Reckoning from the outside, I'm sure there was a lot of we looked wonky.
Yeah, like ripping cards or something and like casting magic spells or
hitting
healing.
Each other with foam swords that sometimes bend.
Yeah, like from the outside, it can look a little bit weird.
That's just something like never judge LARP from the outside.
Yeah.
Experience.
Definitely give it a shot. I guarantee you'll have fun. It is a good time. It really is a good time.
Yeah, and like in the end, bring some friends, like especially if you have like a D&D group or people who are more familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of smaller. Don't be afraid to go to smaller LARPs just to get the feel for it. You don't have to wait until there's like a big one that rolls around that's perfect to your preference, like we did. Also because we tended to do that mostly because we were busy.
Yeah.
So like but there's LARPs all over the United States, all over the world, that just try it. A lot of them aren't expensive. A lot of them are free. Just go and try something. You never know what might happen. If anything, you might just meet people who can help you further into that world if it turns out being something you like.
Yeah. Or if it doesn't, you still met they're great people. Like everybody there was awesome. I really liked everybody I met.
And that's another thing of like it's a social experience. So don't be afraid to be social. Throw yourself into interacting with these people. Like, enjoy the experience and the people that you're having it with.
In fact, that's kind of a fun stretch, too. If you're not a social person, maybe your character is. And maybe you role-playing this person is a cool way to come out of your shell a little bit or something.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people do with D&D. Is, like, they play a very bombastic character to feel out that space. And you can do that even more with being in that, like, being that person.
And the cool thing about, like, the LARP that I found is everybody's playing it, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to feel like I went into it at first being like, okay, I'm going to play a character in front of people. I've never done that before. I was going to feel really self-conscious. But they are too. And they're going through the same thing where they're like, okay, here I go. And then once you start doing it, it becomes so natural.
Yeah.
So much faster than I thought it would.
The people who aren't playing it are the ones that
you're just like, what are you doing? Long story short, we had a great time at Reckoning LARP. Highly recommend when it rolls back around. Definitely give it a look. I would love to say like roll up Rivlin, but Hadrian's need some love.
Honestly, I think of the factions,
grow them.
We were treated the best by the Hadrians.
Yeah, not only that, but if you like full plate armor, like they look good. They had really
and they had
cool.
a lot of like cohesion and there are a lot of like brotherhood amongst themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Like. Red's just a dope color.
Red's a dope color.
Yeah, like
all their costumes look great.
Yeah, like green's great, but we blended into everything. Like
that's the point.
Yeah, that was the point. We were the rangers that Rivlin's good for like putting together a costume. Like I think that a lot of new people chose Rivlin because it was easy to put together a costume.
Yeah, brown and green.
If you were like and it was also kind of the most intro friendly role play.
Yeah. Where
they were just kind of like rangers, and it was good to conceptualize. Where Hadrians and Suzekmar and Vatican all had bigger role play concepts attached to them, so they were a little bit more intimidating to new players.
Yeah, but it was a.
But now, if you join the Rivlins, you need to join the Banana Cult. And
I'll hail the banana queen.
I'll have the banana queen. No, our culture is very complicated now. You have to get your banana necklace or else you can't speak.
She's just saying that because she's selling banana necklaces.
We'll assassinate you in the night if we see you speaking without bananas. Let's just say that.
Oh, Farrell's gonna be so pissed. So speaking of, I wanted to give.
He's used to being assassinated.
I wanted to give a shout out to Kramer over at Living Anachronism. If you haven't checked out his channel, he invited us.
Yeah, he's the whole reason we ended up going to it.
Yeah.
Last minute.
Check out link in the description below. Also,
just desperately wanting to go to a LARP.
Also check out LARPshire. They were there too, and we've gotten real close with them.
Partner in crime.
Got partner in crime.
I think the only interaction I had with I think Giles was his character name.
Yeah.
Was he set up a dummy with a Hadrian like surcoat over it, and it was a really good shot.
He has a good shot.
Which is just shooting it for a while.
Yeah.
And since I was running so back and forth everywhere, I would just pick up his arrows on the way back and hand them to him. And every time I went by, there was just more people
shooting it.
I was like, this is gonna be a problem. We just massacred them this morning.
To bad luck. Did you see he did an episode on making like a fur blanket or a fur rug into like a wolf pelt?
Ooh.
It's really cool. I check that out too.
That sounds like something
I would definitely.
We need more things for our tent because our tent is great, but the inside is messy and
it doesn't help when it's full of bananas.
And apples. We have a lot of apples, too.
Okay, we're belaying this. Anyways, thank you for showing up.
You be the Apple King.
I'll be the Apple King. If you like what we do here, I know this is a little bit different, but
it
was
like
fun. If you liked it, do let us know because we would like to talk more about stuff like this. So if this is something that kind of resonated.
There was more that happened, but just not than the main event.
Yeah, definitely let us know if this is something you're interested in. Also, give us some of that like it love to let us know you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe so you know when we release new content.
Do, because this is an episode with my face on it. And I always like it when my face outdoes his face.
This episode's going to tank now. Damn it. All right, thank you for watching, and in the meantime...
Keep leveling up, you.
You've made it to the end screen. Thank you for watching this long YouTube reel. I know there's a really long one, too. YouTube loves when you stay to the end.
And you stayed even longer.
What is wrong with you at this point, honestly? Anyways, I wanted to take this moment to shout out all of these incredible people. If not for them, we wouldn't be able to do this and go to LARPs and have any of the stuff that we wore to go to LARPs. So, yeah, thank you. If you want to join their noble ranks, consider joining our Patreon. Link in the description below.
Or you can watch any of those videos down there. YouTube likes that too.